All right, let's dive in. We're going to talk about a problem that every team runs into. How in the world do you organize a huge, complicated project so it doesn't just fall apart into chaos? Let's figure it out. First, we have to talk about the chaos itself. We've all been there, right? You're deep inside a massive project, and you just get this sinking feeling that you're totally lost. You even start to wonder if the work you're doing day to day even matters.
You know exactly what I'm talking about, don't you? You're putting in the hours, you're working hard, but the whole project just feels like a ship with no captain, no rudder, just drifting around in a sea of total confusion.
And that feeling of drifting? It's not just a feeling. It leads to real, expensive problems. You get confused teams, deadlines are completely blown, and pretty soon everyone on the team is wondering if their daily grind has any connection at all to the company's big goals. It's a perfect recipe for frustration. Okay, but there is a way out of this chaos. It starts with the absolute smallest, most basic building block of any Agile project, the user story. A user story isn't just a boring task like build a login button. No, it forces us to constantly ask why we're building something and who we're building it for. It's got three super simple parts. As a, that defines who the user is. I should be able to, that describes what they need to do. And the most important part, so that, explains the why, the benefit they get from it. This simple structure guarantees the actual value.
But how do you know if a user story is actually a good one? Well, back in 2003, a developer named Bill Wake came up with this simple, brilliant checklist to make sure every story is high quality. It's called the INVEST criteria.
So INVEST stands for independent, negotiable, valuable, estimatable, small, and testable.
An independent story can be built and shipped without being all tangled up with another one. N for negotiable. A great user story is not a rigid, ironclad contract. It's an invitation to have a conversation. It empowers the dev team to bring their expertise to the table and find the best solution, instead of just blindly following an order. It's the difference between build this specific button and let's figure out the best way for a user to accomplish this goal.
V is for valuable. Every single story has to deliver clear, tangible value to either the user or the business. It forces you to ask that all-important question, why are we even building this? And if you can't answer that, the story probably shouldn't be in your backlog, period.
Then we have E for estimable. Look, if your team looks at a story and says, we have no idea how long this will take, that is a giant red flag. It means the story is either way too vague or just way, way too big. And that makes any kind of reliable planning totally impossible.
And that leads perfectly into S for small. Just look at this example. The good story is so focused, so achievable in a short amount of time. The bad story, well, that's not a story at all, is it? It's an entire epic masquerading as a story. Keeping stories small is how you build momentum and how you reduce risk. You deliver actual value faster and more often. And finally, we have T for testable. A story has to be testable. That means you have clear, agreed-upon criteria for what done actually looks like. Without this, you get that classic, maddening debate. Is it finished? Well, it works on my machine. Clear acceptance criteria just puts an end to all that nonsense.
Let's just take the S for small to see how critical this is. The example on the left, that's a perfect user story. It's focused, it's clear, you can get it done. The one on the right, whoa. That is not a story, that is an entire business plan. As Lean Wisdom points out, trying to tackle something that big all at once is just a recipe for failure. Keeping stories small reduces risk, and honestly, it just feels good to make that steady progress.
And what about estimable? Well, the key here is just plain old clarity. A development team can look at that password reset story and immediately get a sense of what's involved. They can give you a pretty good estimate. But vague, fuzzy goals, they make planning and forecasting totally impossible. So a good story is always a clear story. Simple as that.
Okay, so we've totally nailed the building block, that perfectly crafted user story. But remember, these are small, on purpose. So how in the world do we connect these tiny, focused tasks to our giant rocket-launching ambitions? Well, the answer is we start scaling up the hierarchy. The very next step up the ladder from a story is the epic. A great epic might be something like improve streaming service for the Q1 launch. Now that's not something you can just knock out in a week, right? Instead, it gives you this unifying theme for maybe dozens of smaller user stories, like improving the video buffering, or adding a user rating feature, or making the search results faster.
And then, sitting right at the very top of this whole hierarchy, you have the initiative. This is just the collection of related epics. Initiatives represent an organization's biggest, most strategic goals.
Let's put this all together. You have the hierarchy, initiatives, epics, and stories that gives you a clear structure. And then you have the invest checklist, making sure every single one of those stories is a solid, high-quality building block. And when you combine those two things, well, something pretty powerful starts to happen.
The payoff is huge, and it directly attacks that chaos we talked about at the beginning. Communication suddenly becomes crystal clear because everyone knows the why behind their work. Your planning gets way more accurate. You gain this incredible flexibility to adapt to change without the whole project falling over. And most importantly, every single task is laser-focused on delivering real value. This whole system isn't about creating rigid, suffocating rules. It's about creating just enough structure to allow for maximum flexibility. It gives you the framework you need to bring order to the chaos, whether you're building a simple app or, even launching a rocket into space.
And that really leaves us with one final question to think about for your own work. You know what your project's big goal is. That part's probably set. But are your stories, are they small enough and good enough to actually win? To get you there?